My name is Chief Timothy Grenno from Whitman Fire Rescue, and I would like to welcome you to this edition of Chief Talk. Chief Talk is a new program which I bring to you from the cable studios in Whitman to help you explore with us the challenges that we face in today's fire service, and not only in the fire service, but as emergency management directors in our communities. With me is Chief Andrew Reardon. He's the fire chief from the town of Norwell, Massachusetts. Chief Reardon also serves as the emergency management director in the town of Norwell, as I do in Whitman. Both of us are active members in the Plymouth County Fire Chiefs Association and the Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts. I think it would be prudent to start this episode off with what the Fire Chiefs Association of not only Plymouth County but of Massachusetts has done over the past several years to make our firefighting profession a safer and more efficient operation.
Well, Chief Grenno, thank you for the opportunity to come. I'm delighted to be here on your inaugural taping. I think this is it's a great initiative. Once again, you're thinking outside the box. In terms of what's going on with the Fire Chiefs Association of Plymouth County and the surrounding communities, over the last 7 to 8 years, the Fire Chiefs Association has taken the initiative to look at how we, your department, my department, as well as the 27 or 28 other communities, can cooperate collectively in responding to emergencies and managing significant events that happen within the day-to-day operations. As you know, we've moved forward with improving our radio infrastructure. We've just invested over $1.5 million and look at investing more in that. And hopefully that will make it easier for us to work together at the scene of a significant event.
Well, let's look at the $1.5 million that we're currently investing right now. That $1.5 million is basically grant money.
Right.
So when we look at a major type event, or even our day-to-day operations, a lot of our critical failures are with radio systems.
I would agree with you, Chief. In fact, I think if you look at the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, they will tell you that one of the five most notable contributing areas of firefighter injury or death is a failure of the communication system. And following what we've been doing, we're making a significant attempt to lessen the likelihood of that being a problem for you and I, and more importantly for our staff. And
this newer or this modern day radio system is from what we are benefiting from is a federal grant through the Assistance for Firefighters grant, and it's one of a kind that the Plymouth County Fire Chiefs have never ventured into. This is thinking outside the box, as you said.
Well, again, Chief, I think to your credit and again to the credit of all of the chiefs of Plymouth County, having the vision to say, hey, let's try this cooperatively, collectively, instead of you going off on your own, my department going off on our own. We've sat down and said, let's see what we can do as a team or as a group and make this thing move forward. And we've had some challenges. I mean, let's be honest. When we inherited, you and I inherited the system, we had our forefathers or the people that came before us certainly had a vision, but we weren't able to maintain it. And again, through a lot of folks' efforts, we've been able to secure these grants, make the investment, and hopefully we will have, from what I can see, a state-of-the-art system.
And the bottom line of our efforts, and the bottom line of our funding purposes, basically goes back to not only firefighter safety but civilian safety.
Absolutely. Chief, we look as we come to the end of September, the beginning of October, we're talking. I mean, we're always you and I. Our primary focus as chief of department is to send everybody home safe and to make everyone who lives in our communities as safe as possible with the dangers of fire and other medical issues. But you know, that's the bottom line. You know, the fire service, fire rescue service, has always stood for safety first. Safety and life rescue has always been fundamental values that we've always lived with.
And as we move into the fall months, we're looking at cold weather quickly approaching, and what comes along the first week of October. But it's Fire Prevention Week, and I generally take in the town of Whitman, and I use the local paper, the Whitman Express, as a great resource tool. I try to send out a weekly reminder of, you know, it's time to have your chimneys cleaned. Check, you know, when we turn the clocks, we change the batteries in our smoke detectors. What points do you have or thoughts do you have on Fire Prevention Week and how that we can better inform the public and keep the public safe?
Well, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I have a couple of staff members that are very involved with social media. We're constantly putting out information all over our Twitter accounts in terms of our concerns. I agree with you. I mean, it is coming into heating season, and if you look at the statistics, fires most likely occur in a person's home, either in the cooking area or the mechanical or the heating area. And you oftentimes, I mean, it's tough. I mean, with the economy being what it has been lately, I'm sure it's been tough for people to make sure that maintenance on their oil or gas burners is done, make sure that their chimneys have been swept and inspected. I know in my community, it's not uncommon to have people heating or partially heating their homes with wood. And again, this is something we used to do, I know, years and years ago, and it's now it's coming kind of cyclically coming back into vogue. And folks don't understand the value or the need to have their chimneys inspected, to be burning dry wood, not wet wood, and to be vigilant in terms of, you know, what are we doing with our home heating systems?
We routinely see each heating season chimney fires, and you know, focus on that for one moment, because what I've been seeing over the past couple years is repeat, and I don't want to call them offenders, but repeat homes with the same chimney issues. And it's surprising that the majority of those homeowners will tell me that they just had their chimney cleaned a year ago. And I think that shows I think that stresses the importance of what you burn for wood and how often to have your like chimney cleaned. Mm-hmm. Several residents have spoken to me about having their like chimneys cleaned like once every 2 years or 3 years, and I try to stress the fact that you really need to have these cleaned yearly if you're using a wood burning stove.
We had an incident last year, Chief. I refer to it as our 2-day chimney fire, and it was one of those unfortunate events where we had an outside chimney. Now, my home is a cape, as you know, and we have a center core chimney. And that center core chimney preserves a little bit more of the heat than the exterior chimneys, or the chimneys that you typically find at the end of a home. Mm-hmm. Well, this particular home had an exterior chimney, and the gentleman used it daily. I mean, that was his primary heating source. And he was vigilant about cleaning it, but unfortunately, environmental conditions and in conjunction with the fact that he got some non-kiln dried wood really built up the creosote and created a situation where the old creosote had fallen behind one of his dampers. And it ended up as a real problem. We had to dismantle the chimney in order to put the fire out. And it's a shame, especially those things don't occur on 70 degrees days in September. Those things occur, as you know, in December, January, and February, when it's very cold. And now the family is in a bad way.
I agree with you. Now that we're talking about heating systems and chimneys, I think that we would be remiss if we didn't have a little discussion about smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. Carbon monoxide, as we all know, is referred to as the silent killer. It's colorless, it is odorless, and it attacks any time of the day without you knowing it. And it's odd to see that so early in the season, but I was noticing last night on our paging system that I believe it was in the the city of Cambridge or city of Somerville, where they actually experienced a CO type of incident with 5 or 6 patients. So
again, here we are, right? We're sitting square in the middle of Plymouth County, where had it not been the stick-to-itiveness of a few county fire officials, as well as some of the members of the legislature, we wouldn't have the carbon monoxide detectors and the laws that we have. But you know, how many of us were, again, I go back to how cold it was 1 or 2 days ago when people were complaining, at least on social media, about the fact that they had to turn on the heat. And you don't think about it when you have your gas burner or your oil burner. You just turn it on for a little bit. But over the summer, if those squirrels have built nests in your chimneys, if you have developed a fracture in your or a disconnection in one of your pipes, you don't really think about that poisonous, colorless, odorless gas seeping into your home. And thank heaven that we have the carbon monoxide detector regulations that we have, so that people are aware of that. And even though it is somewhat problematic, you have this noise going off in the house, and Jesus, should I call 911? Should I get the fire department down there? Absolutely, because I'm sure your department, as well as mine, have meters that we can simply walk through the house and make a determination whether there's a problem or not.
And you began to make the statement like earlier, but as part of the process to approve that regulation on carbon monoxide detectors, it actually started here in Plymouth County with the horrific fatality down in the town of Plymouth, I believe it was. And Chief Bradley, he teamed up with Senate President Murray and State Fire Marshal Cohen, and they were able to push legislation through to require carbon monoxide detectors in residential homes, just as smoke detectors are. And they have proven life-saving over the past several years.
How many times have you and I talked to people about the fact that, geez, I had headaches, I had flu-like symptoms, and I grew up in a home initially, same home I own. We burned coal initially, and then we went to oil, and we didn't think about those things. And now, you know, it certainly is today. I think the house is a lot safer. Just we have that added level of protection that should something go wrong, we're going to be alerted.
I agree. And I think the other side to why we are experiencing so many issues with the carbon monoxide is today's building construction. Houses are built much more sounder, much more tighter. There's limited like airflow. My house was built in 1901. You know, before I had the blown-in insulation done, you could stand beside a window in January and feel the cold air blowing through it.
Well, I mean, look at what we're doing. I mean, look at all the new houses or the new properties that are being built. We're using lightweight construction, but we are making them tighter, and there is much less air flow, air current. I mean, when you were a kid, when I was a kid, we didn't worry, we didn't know about things like mold and those things, and now everybody, or a number of people, are certainly aware of that, and you know, with that comes, as we make our environment tighter, we end up with different types of problems.
So if we look at Fire Prevention Week, and we've discussed smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, what do you do in the town of Norwell to get the message out to change your clock, change your batteries?
As I explained earlier, we use social media, we use the local press. We certainly, you know, would hope that people would watch, you know, maybe people from Whitman and Hanson will share their view of cable. But I mean, it's difficult, as you know, being a small town. We don't have the bully pulpit that some people have, but we do our best, and you know, using those local media avenues to say, hey, when you change your clocks, change your smoke detectors, make sure your carbon monoxide detectors are operational. One thing, Chief, that we're making a push on this year in my town is making sure that your house numbers are clearly visible from the street. I don't know what your experience in Whitman is, but I know that every inspection that we do, we make a point of that. But even those homes that aren't being inspected, man, it's tough at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, when you're trying to find somebody, to find that address, if it's not clearly visible from the street. And I ask people to think about looking for their home at 2 a.m.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I just had a discussion with our animal control officer a short time ago, and in discussions with my shift commanders, we are experiencing the same issue. When we go out and we perform a smoke detector inspection because Mrs. Jones is selling her house, part of that smoke detector inspection requires house numbers on the front of the home. With the way that the economy has been, there hasn't been a whole heck of a lot of housing sales. We are on the upkick now, but we haven't seen a lot of it. So we haven't been able to police it as good as we have wanted to. And what we are experiencing is the same frustration as what you were saying, is that our guys are going out 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, it could be 230 Temple Street and there's no house numbers, so they have a 232 and they have a 240. There's 3 houses in between, and those are critical minutes wasted. If you have somebody whose house is on fire, if you have somebody who's having chest pain or is in cardiac arrest, you know, those 3 or 4 minutes or that we take to knock on doors to find the proper house, those are critical minutes.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Chief. Just last night, we had a situation where a family member couldn't reach an elder family member and was concerned about their well-being. It turned out everything was fine. Families weren't necessarily touching base like they should. But, you know, had we not been able to find that address and had that senior member of our community been in distress, it would, as you say, it would have taken more minutes for us to get to that person. As I said, in our case last night, everything's wonderful. Everybody had a good chuckle after the event. But more importantly, you know, my own mother laid on her floor at her home for some 8 hours before people could find her. And I think that's very important. I mean, as a son in my business, you certainly feel like a heel after that. Fortunately, her house numbers were visible. But, you know, when we're talking about senior citizens, we're talking about young children home by themselves, we're talking about people who are in distress. As you said, every minute counts. And for us to be able to find that address spot on and not, as you say, not trying to make a decision whether or not this is 230, 240, 232, it makes a huge difference.
Couldn't agree more. Speaking of the elderly population, my mother turns 81 years old next week.
Does she realize you just said that on cable television?
She lives in East Bridgewater, so she doesn't see the show,
okay.
So I'm safe. She obviously, or she takes medications each day for different ailments. Are you finding an issue or a problem with the senior population and medications in the medical boxes outside of the pill boxes with no identification?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how many times, and I would venture a guess that we're absolutely in the same ballpark on this one, where, you know, folks put their medication out by day or by time of day. Mm-hmm. I think you can go to the store and buy something that's got 7 by 3 or 4 different tablets, and you can put them in where they need to go, and that's fine if things are going well. The problem we find is, you know, during a medical emergency, it's being able to identify what the individual has taken and is prescribed, and that makes life tough. And if we have, I don't know if Whitman uses, but we still use the File for Life
yes.
Program, and constantly after people to fill that out, put it on their refrigerator, put it on a cabinet door, somewhere where our paramedics can find it, and we ask them to make multiple copies, because, you know, we can't always guarantee that the piece of paper that goes to the hospital is going to come home.
When we moved my mother into East Bridgewater from her home in Halifax, I was very impressed with the East Bridgewater Housing Authority because as part of the application process, they gave you the File for Life, and they required that to be filled out. When that was completed, that was shipped off to East Bridgewater Fire Department. They put it into their computer system and then sent her back a computer-generated file for life form, which now hangs on her refrigerator. I had obviously listed all her medications out already, and everything was hanging on the door. My mother, being who she is, crossed everything out and just wrote, call Whitman Fire Chief Tim Grenno, which, that's
Right.
that's Mom.
That's it.
But I've since had discussions with the Council on Aging director in Whitman, and although she hands out the File for Life programs, we are going to become more involved in that program, where hopefully those forms will come directly to us, and we can enter that data into our database in the ambulance reporting software. So when they go to Andy Reardon's house and they punch in your name, it comes up with all of your medications and stuff like that. So
Well, I think, Chief, I think the community, again, once again, you're thinking outside the box, but I would argue that, or suggest that, the
you can
more,
argue.
well, yeah, the more information we have, the better off we're going to be, and the better treatment we're going to be able to, or at least our paramedics are going to be able to provide to the citizenry. And I would say that not only does it affect seniors, it affects those folks, or it benefits those folks who have ongoing medical issues that, day to day we may not even know of, but on those rare occasions that we interact with them, it would be great to have that information, and as you say, in a database, would be extremely helpful.
So basically, and this is a direct request to our watching audience, is that if you use those in I'll use the term tackle box for your pill storage, and usually it's a 7-day or even as much as a 30-day box, which you can isolate each one of your pills into. We do request that you list all of your medications, and if you do not have a file for life, that you contact Barbara Garvey at the Council on Aging Center in Whitman, and she will provide you a file for life. And what that tag does is you place your name, your address, your date of birth, in your pertinent medical history, and what medications that you're taking on that list. So God forbid if something happens to somebody, family member shows up, they find them unconscious on the ground in their living room. If we don't have any medical data, it's now a guessing game as to what's going on. And my medics are excellent medics. They're very good on diagnosticians. I don't even think that's a word.
I think it might be.
It could be a word. But if we had that list of medicines and they find Mrs. Smith who has a heart rate of 30, and we look at the list and she's taking atenolol, well, maybe she overdosed on that by accident. And we can give drugs to counteract that and bring that heart rate up again. So it's very, very important that if people do use that type of medication storage box, that they have a list of what they're taking in close proximity to those medications.
Chief, let me ask you this. You made a comment about our ability to, talk with family members or have that information available regarding medications. What are you doing, or are you doing anything unique in Whitman regarding emergency management or emergency notification in the event of a tornado? I know those are very infrequent, but we've had a couple of them here in Whitman. I mean, do you have any unique plans?
We have a couple different notification avenues that we use. We also use social media. We have the town website. I have a fire department Twitter account. We have a fire department Facebook account. We have an emergency management Facebook account. The police have one. We use those avenues for general type of notifications, non-emergency type of stuff. I know that the police chief will post stuff on his Facebook page if there was a big arrest overnight, or if there was a lot of activity in town, just to basically explain why there was 6 police cruisers on Bedford Street or whatever. In the case of the emergency notification for a tornado or a hurricane or whatever, we have the code red system. And with the old system that we used to have was run through the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department. We have since purchased our own code red system for the town. And to be quite honest with you, I think the DPW uses it the most right now, because with the system, we are able to isolate it down to specific houses and streets. So if there's a water break on Thayer Avenue, the DPW can take every single house on Thayer Avenue and do basically a reverse 911 call and let them know that there's a water break at 23 on Thayer Avenue, and that we're working on it, and we expect to have it back in 6 hours. So for the emergency notifications, we send it out townwide with what's going on. I use it quite frequently with snowstorms. If like we're looking at like a major storm that's coming up on the coast, when we speak with National Grid and they tell us that this is a type 1 event or a type 2 event, then I let our residents know that National Grid is expecting 4+ days of like power outages and stuff like that. So that's what we use for emergency notifications. The winter storms are quickly approaching. We're actually winding down our first show of 30 minutes. We have about 2 minutes left. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, Chief, I just got to tell you, I think this is a great opportunity. This is a great format. Again, I appreciate the fact that you invited me in for the inaugural event. I'm all, you know me, I'm just giddy with delight to have been chosen to come in.
Well, I guess it's safe to say that you didn't know what you were doing until lunch today.
That's right.
I made sure that I kept this a secret from you until lunch today. So I would just like to thank you for coming on to the show today. I would like to remind residents that the Fire Department open house is coming up in October. You can check out the Fire Department Facebook page or the postings in the Whitman Express. It's a great day. We'll have the sprinkler trailer there from the Department of Fire Services. We'll have the National Grid trailer there to teach our residents about electrical safety and hazards. And with that, I would like to say good day to you all. Thank you for viewing, and have yourself a great week.